Hello everyone and welcome back to Destiny 2. Of course, yesterday was a jam-packed day full of Destiny 2 news. We saw a brand new story trailer like I had anticipated, we got an updated release date of September 6th, we got the beta dates confirmed starting on July 18th, but we've also been getting lots of news coming from other sources, including an interview with Luke Smith given by PC Gamer, which provides a ton of new information about some burning questions we have about this game, mainly centering around the core story of Destiny 2, vault space, and perhaps the most exciting piece of news, Word of Dawn is returning to Destiny 2. First off, I want to apologize in advance for the length of the video. The amount of news coming out of E3 has been absolutely insane, and I want to deliver all of this information in the most efficient way possible. So without further ado, let's jump in. Before we jump into it, I want to extend the Destiny 2 beta code giveaway that I started in my previous video into this video as well. So to enter a chance to win one of the beta codes, all you have to do is like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below, letting me know which of the following topics you're most excited about. I'll be announcing the winners on Friday on Twitter, so be sure to follow me there at FutureFoe to see if you've won. I cheekily placed a beta code in the title of the previous video just cuz, and I'm glad someone did redeem it, but of course I have 2 more of those beta codes remaining, so be sure to enter to win. Anyways, jumping into the questions, let's start with some pretty exciting news for those Defender Titan fans out there, and that is the Word of Dawn is in fact returning to Destiny 2. This of course comes from Luke Smith himself, who is a huge fan of the Super and sees the value of a well-placed Word of Dawn, just like the rest of us, and its impact on the encounter. Now, the Defender subclass isn't returning, but instead the Word of Dawn super ability is being given to the new Sentinel Titan. The way it works is with an override in the Sentinel subclass, so it seems that one of the Sentinel focuses will feature this override. Luke goes on to describe this mechanic as such. When you cast your super, you can press and hold the super activation and you'll place a Word of Dawn instead. So the Sentinel super of course is where you summon a void shield that you can use in close range melee combat, toss at enemies, or use as a walking barrier with possible weapons of light properties, as you can see this hunter's bullet being affected by shooting through the shield. So instead of just tapping the 2 shoulder buttons to summon the shield, with this override you will be able to hold them down instead for a couple seconds and cast a Word of Dawn instead. This is absolutely fantastic news and a huge value add for the Sentinel. I was starting to imagine the possibilities of using the Titan Wall class ability combined with maybe the Healing Rift to create a faux Blessing of Light situation, but alas, it seems you won't have to resort to things like that. I keep getting more and more excited for all of these subclasses the more information we get about them. If you still have your doubts about the subclass system, I hope this shows that Bungie really cares about giving us useful tools in combat and letting us play the game we want to play it. Now, unfortunately, this still leaves us with even more questions about the Word of Dawn override. Mainly, will the bubbles still have buffing properties like Blessing of Light, Weapons of Light, and Armor of Light? I suppose we'll just have to wait until we learn the subclass perks for the Sentinel, and not to mention that we are going to get our hands on the Sentinel along with the other 5 known subclasses during the beta, so we'll have our own chance to play around and see what the Sentinel is all about. The next burning question that was answered in this article was in regards to what will surely be a hot button issue continuing into Destiny 2, and that is vault space. When Luke Smith was asked about the tower vault being destroyed, he informed us that there will in fact be a vault in the farm social space in the European Dead Zone. That is where we will be able to store our hordes of new gear. However, when asked about how big the vault will be, Luke did not have a straight answer for us. He did state that I exited my last meeting, which was about some systems work, and the vaults are always a topic of conversation and discussion for the systems team. We're continuing to look at it, but nothing to share today. So this tells us a couple of things. First, we can expect our collections to behave the same way they do in Destiny 1, meaning that since vault space is still a thing, you can expect the need to visit them in person or via an app to get what you need. And since they are still talking about space, I expect the kiosks to show up somewhere in some capacity, although I'm not sure how that would fit in with the more rural aesthetic of the farm. I'm personally hoping that they eventually figure out a new intuitive system to organize your gear. PC Gamer did ask Luke Smith about loadouts, and sadly loadouts will not be a thing in Destiny 2, at least not at launch. It's not off the table, but it's not a feature they're currently developing. So in short, the vault is back, but we still don't know how much space we'll be getting. Let's just hope that it's a lot. One of the key things holding back vault space in Destiny 1 was the hardware limitation of legacy consoles. With that limitation no longer a factor, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm hoping for a ton of space, like hundreds of slots, but please Bungie, give us some way to organize it all a bit better. But if you're not going to be giving us a lot of slots, maybe you could circumvent the entire issue by giving us a reason to dismantle old weapons, like making Infusion also carry over perks from other weapons. That would be kind of cool. So let's say I find a weapon in the wild that I think looks really cool or shoots really well, but I want better perks on it. I can take an old weapon that has really good perks from my vault and infuse it into the new one. That way I have a smaller and tighter arsenal of weapons that is much more effective. The final burning question that was answered in the interview was about the core story of Destiny. We of course know that the story of Destiny 2 involves the invasion of Gaul and his Red Legion, us losing our power, having to travel the system to regain our light, and then returning to Earth to take back our home. But the question was whether or not we will be running into some of the more mysterious characters introduced in Destiny 1, and if those core stories would be touched on. When asked if we would get answers to stories about the Darkness and the Speaker, the answer from Luke Smith was definitely a little bittersweet. He stated not specifically all of those questions. I think some of those questions we've taken off the shelf to look at, and some of those questions we're leaving on the shelf and may never answer. Personally, I think Destiny 1 was sort of an issue 0 in a comic book series. It's about introducing the universe and some characters in it and some statements, but I think we want to, and a bunch of those statements were questions. I don't think that we'll answer all of those statements from the first game, and aren't going to attempt to in Destiny 2 either. We're telling a story here with some momentum, and I think it's going to show direction and progress for where the arc of Destiny is going to go. And that arc is, for us, really beginning with Game 2. This was definitely the vibe I got ever since we started learning about this game. The game is Luke Smith's vision, and he wants to tell a more cohesive and grounded story, which honestly I'm much more excited about. It's important to have player investment, and while those stories were intriguing, I'm more interested to learn how all of that applies to us. It looks like Destiny 2 is starting a major story arc that will continue through the rest of the franchise, and you can expect some of those new story seeds to be planted at the end of the campaign. That may in fact be where the 2 expansions come in, to start to poke at this larger overarching story that will be developed over the next 7 years or so. When asked about the Stranger in the same vein, Luke answered, "With Destiny we have so many cool opportunities to tell stories in and out of the game. And we have a bunch of characters who are interesting, but the Exo Stranger is one that always makes me chuckle a little bit, because I feel that's one character where we actually wrapped up the arc. She gave you a sweet gun and then dissolved, presumably off to do something else. So I feel like all of our characters we've introduced and exited, we actually exited her effectively, but she always comes up. So there's obviously something to the character that piques people's curiosity. So sadly, don't hold your breath for the return of the Stranger in Destiny 2, but it could be a character that could make a return in the future. I hope they work her into the Osiris expansion. I think that's where it makes the most sense, especially if it also involves the Vex and time travel. They could work in some really cool backstory about time travel and the Exos. That's one thing we haven't really learned too much about. If they plan on working more story into the actual game, it would only make sense that we learn more about the Awoken and the Exos, but we'll just have to wait and see. But in regards to story, it's important to remember that Destiny's original writer and creative director, Joseph Staten, did depart Bungie before the release of Destiny 1, and Luke Smith had to take over what was already being worked on and try to finish it in the most cohesive way he could. The good news is that our first taste of what Luke Smith can cook up was with The Taken King, a very focused and purposed story. There was still plenty of lore surrounding it with things like the Book of Shadows, and I'm not at all worried about the depth of lore for Destiny 2. The story that mattered to the writers of Destiny 2 are written into your interactions with the world. Most of them will be told through the campaign, quests, adventures, lost sectors, and scannable items. I've made this point in a previous video, but the whole point is to immerse you into the world of Destiny. Yes, Grimoire did give us a nice peek into the Golden Age and how things used to be, but that base has now been set. Like Luke mentioned in the previous quote, now it's time to move forward and tell the story of our time and our Guardians. It is a bit of a bummer that we're not going to be able to further explore the extended universe of Destiny through the Grimoire, but the story that we are getting, we're going to be much more immersed in and hopefully a lot more satisfied with. And finally, as a bonus burning question, we all were wondering whether or not we're going to have control over our ships in Destiny 2. Well, it turns out that these ships for Destiny 2 are still nothing more than load screen trinkets. This was unfortunately confirmed by Luke Smith during the end of the interview, and while I am a little sad that we're not going to have flight sequences, I don't want them to add features that are not as polished as they should be. We all know how things can go wrong in that department with games like Star Wars Battlefront having less than stellar aerial combat. However, we do know that Bungie is really good at aerial combat with games like Halo, so hopefully that's not completely off the table. I would love the chance to be able to control my huge collection of ships, upgrade them, and of course shoot those pesky aliens out of the sky. Anyways, that brings us to the end of this video. There is still a ton of news. I have a giant laundry list of topics to go over. We have the new story trailer that I want to go over. We also have a lot of information about weapons that I think I'll put into one cohesive video. So you can definitely expect a lot of videos being posted over this coming week. And if you haven't had a chance to watch these videos from yesterday, you can look for these thumbnails on my channel or click the links to them in the description. In the first video, I go over the Arcstrider subclass and I put together a cool little Photoshop to help you follow along. And yesterday, we also went over the beta details, including the new release date, the beta date, and of course the PlayStation exclusives. So be sure to check those videos out, lots of great information there. Again, lots more coming later in the week, so drop a like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for much more Destiny 2 coverage, and I will see you all next time. And since it is given to us in text form, here is my handy dandy Photoshop of the Arcstrider subclass. The subclass is designed for close quarter melee combat with high risk, high reward scenarios for you to take advantage of and master with precise and intelligent play.